At least one clock in the room says 6 o'clock. Would the clerk call the roll?
Bergson,
She's
Harper, Kurtz, Petrie, Schrader, Esri, Langenheim.
Here.
Quorum is present.
Okay, we have a quorum. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, public participation. But before I go any further, oh, excuse me. Move to approve the agenda, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Any discussion?
I thought you were going to move some items on the agenda.
What?
You're going to move some items on the agenda.
I will do that after it's been approved.
No, you have to do it before.
I don't really think so. The items are on the agenda. If we shuffle them, that's another matter. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, now, because we have a large public input on the local foods resolution, I propose that we move item 9B to the top of the agenda.
So moved.
And all in favor say aye. Okay, it's been done. Now, public participation. I believe we're ready for that. Becky P., or is it Roach?
It's Roach. It is Roach.
Becky Roach.
And I'm here just to speak in, oh, I have to go through it.
Would you step up and please turn on the
It's on.
PA system?
Hi, I'm just here to speak in support of the addition of the 13th criterion for the consideration of land that's being rezoned from agricultural use to other uses, to take into consideration its possible use as a site for local agriculture, local food agriculture. I think it's really important from an economic development perspective, and I think we need to look at what smaller parcels of land can be used for as far as for growing local food. So that's what I'm here for.
Okay, Catherine Capel.
Okay. I'm a zoning board member, and I'm also on the Champaign County Local Food Policy Committee, that came up with the resolution asking that ELUC send the zoning board the suggestion that we consider a 13th criteria when we're rezoning for an RRO. I've been involved in local food since 2007 with a variety of organizations, and access to land has been identified as one of the biggest barriers to local food production. I think through a variety of documents, the county has recognized local food production as an opportunity for economic development, and I think Champaign County would benefit. I agree with the resolution that we should consider the impact of development on the local food production capacity of a specific piece of property that wants to be, that is being applied for an RRO. But I think also, more importantly, as a zoning board member, I would like the ability to consider the impact of development on existing local food production operations that are nearby. And I don't think there's anything in our, currently in the LISA or in any of the factors that really allow for that consideration. Thank you.
Okay. Lisa Haynes.
Hi, I'm a local food producer, and I'm here to support you moving the local foods policy to the ZBA. I've had a lot of issues with development in our area. Some things that have happened, you know, we have new neighbors, dog killed some chickens, which upsets my customers who want eggs. We had a neighbor who didn't like how loud our sheep are, shot at the sheep. The sheriff told me there's nothing they can do about it unless the sheep is actually killed, until there's actual economic damage. There's problems with traffic. I think anybody that farms knows how hard it can be to move equipment from one spot to another. As a small landholder, it's just as hard for us. When you start getting a lot of cars in the area, there's kids going 40 miles an hour and you're trying to turn your hay baler into your field. I think that a lot of us on small parcels of land are disproportionately affected by subdivisions. We have, well, obviously smaller parcels, so our neighbors are that much closer. You know, we've got houses 200 yards away, you know, 50 yards from our field of livestock. So that can be a huge problem. I'd really like the ZBA to be able to consider farms like ours and local food when they're making their decisions. Thanks.
Thank you. Eric Thorsland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Eric Thorsland. I am a small farmer. I farm with the young lady that just spoke. I am her free help. I am also chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I look forward to this being moved to the Zoning Board where we can work on it, have public hearings about it. I would echo everything that my wife has said and add that the Department of Ag considers a small farm something below $250,000 in revenue. I could only dream of that kind of revenue for our little plot. We get lost in the noise, I think, of big agriculture. The difference between our farm and a lot of other farms and a lot of the local food and small producers is I can go to the backyard, to the farm, harvest things, and make dinner that night with what comes off the farm. We have probably 300 customers that rely on us for good food, food from here. We operate almost year-round now. We do have a lot of pressure from encroachment. I think it would be very valuable for parcels like ours that have been well-developed into a local food production area, even though it's quite small by the standards of regular commodity agriculture. It's very well set up now to do what it does. To have this extra weight when we look at RROs and where they're located, and when we see parcels like this that may come up in the future, it would be important to be able to give them a little more bearing than just the leases score on the soil itself. So I would be very much supportive of it when it gets to the ZBA, give it a fair public hearing, and I hope that there's a lot more people when that comes to there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now, can I have a motion to refer this to the ZBA?
Are we done with public participation?
What?
We're just on public participation.
Oh, excuse me. All right. Let's bring up item 9B.
Are we done with public participation?
What?
Are we done with public participation?
She's going to comment on this after it's been. What? Oh, didn't we get to Todd? Excuse me, Todd.
Well, you got more slips than that, too.
Huh?
You've got more slips than that.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for moving the Local Foods Policy Council resolution up on the agenda tonight and for considering it. I'm the chair of the Local Foods Policy Council, and of course, Kathy and Becky are also on the council, have already spoken. I just wanted to go through briefly, I'm not going to read this because you've got it in front of you, but just to talk a little bit about the things that we put in the resolution. And one was the Illinois Food, Farm, and Jobs Act of 2007, calling for expanding the local and organic food system. So this is something that's not unique to this area. We're part of a trend, and in fact, some of the statistics that we find is that local food and organic food production is the fastest growing agricultural sector. I mean, it's still very small, but it's growing at, I think, 4 times over the last 10 years. So it is growing much faster than any other part of agriculture at the present time. Another important point that I think a couple of the speakers have talked about already is thinking about the local farming and local food production as economic development, and as we think of agriculture as economic development. And so, and I think it's important to realize that with local food production, it is labor intensive. And so the more acreage that's put into local food production, the more jobs we're creating. One of the reasons I got appointed to the Local Foods Policy Council is because the church that I go to, St. Matthew Lutheran Church on South Philo Road, just started up a CSA last year, Community Supported Agriculture Farm. It's small, only 3 or 4 acres. But our farmer tells us that it generally takes about 1 person to do an acre. And of course, in conventional farming, 1 person can do hundreds of acres. And so you can see the employment potential of locally grown food farms. And of course, you know, the county board established our council so that we can offer better and fresher food and to encourage the efficient use of land and the preservation and conservation of agriculture. And one of the things that we wanted to have this 13th criterion for is because in taking we spent several meetings taking a look at the LISA and all of the factors that are in the LISA. And you probably remember our resolution last year. We wanted to try to weigh in on that. But I think, you know, you'd gone far enough down the road with the LISA the way it was that it wasn't, I think you were right in saying don't consider it in the LISA, and went ahead with the LISA the way it was without our resolution. But this is another attempt to have the impact on small local farms considered when you're doing the rezonings of agricultural land. Because the LISA, it seems like, emphasizes protection of the larger parcels of land, the ones that are more remote and good for agricultural commodities, traditional corn and beans. But we thought that the smaller farms geared towards local food production needed some of the protection as well. And finally, the last whereas, you know, we are blessed in Champaign County with the most productive soils in the world, not just the state or the nation, but in the world. And I think it's very important to preserve those for food production as much as possible. And so those are some of the reasons that we came up with for passing this resolution. We certainly appreciate you considering it tonight, and would ask for your support to send this to the ZBA for a full hearing. And I'll answer any questions if you have any. Okay. Thank you so much.
Now, can we have a motion to forward this item to, any communications? I'm having troubles this morning. Are there any communications? There don't appear to be any. Okay, now can we have a motion? Go ahead.
Yes, I move that we pass this forward to the ZBA for their consideration for a 13th criteria to the RRO.
Do we have a second? Second. Okay, now, do you have a comment?
Well, a constituent did send me a comment, and the chair preferred that I read it at this point in time rather than during public participation, so I'll read it into the record right now. The Land Resource Management Plan Steering Committee, of which I was a member, recognized the importance of local foods and proposed including an objective concerning local foods in the plan. The LRMP passed by the County Board on 22 April 2010 included a similar objective. It is unfortunate that the recently adopted LISA update did not prioritize factors dealing specifically with local foods. However, the Champaign County Local Food Policy Council has adopted a resolution for ELUC's consideration, which will recognize the importance of local food production in the Rural Residential Overlay, or RRO, process. I hope that ELUC will support this resolution from the Champaign County Local Foods Policy Council, which will further demonstrate the county's interest and recognition of the importance of this issue. And this is from Hal Barnhart.
Okay. Any further comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I've got comments. I'm probably going to intersperse questions within them. And let me state right off the bat that as someone who used to be a small producer, I don't think I am a large producer anymore. In fact, the way size of farms have gone anymore, I'm still a small producer. But in the day, I used to have a small hog operation, and it was a local food operation as we define it today. I didn't think of it back then as being one, but today it is. And also, I've been a commercial grain farmer as I am today. I'm probably the largest wheat farmer, one of the largest wheat farmers in the county. I don't think there's too many farms out there that have 160 acres of wheat right now, waiting to come out of winter hibernation. But on our farm, we do. So I have practices that not only that incorporate row crops, but other crops into a rotation. That being said, and I've been to many hearings about especially when we put in place a local food policy committee and other public hearings, including land evaluation site assessment, which I was at a few of those public hearings, that steering committee. And so I've heard talk about, the small farms, the exposure that they have compared with farms like I have, who have exposure to. I've heard talk about, we have urban population moving further out to the rural areas that affect us in agriculture, and I'll throw us all in the basket because I don't see how you can separate agriculture as it is out in the rural area, because I've been there. I've done it all. When I'm driving my car and I meet somebody on my rural township road, I have to give up half the road. When I'm moving a farm implement between dawn and dusk, I really don't have to. And that's law. But I do. But I'm moving in probably a 15 or 20 foot vehicle down the road, and I've got people who don't really have any connection to agriculture and don't understand how slow I'm moving and how big I am and how I can't get off the road fast enough. And so that gets back to what I'm saying about agriculture. So I'm all for protecting any agriculture out in the unincorporated areas of the county. Absolutely. I was happy years ago when we finally put teeth in the RRO. It used to be the RRO was, if they met the criteria of policy and the ordinance and other policies the county board had, you could plant an RRO pretty much anywhere if you met the criteria. Now we've got teeth in it where we can actually, as a county board, deny them now, where we didn't have the ability to deny them. But now we do. So I find it exasperating when I'm thinking that, here's this agriculture over here, but it's different than this agriculture over here, and I'm not really seeing why it is. I mean, I've farmed as small as parcels as a 7-acre piece of ground for a neighbor that had it behind his horse farm. He had some horses. He didn't board them. They were his horses. He had 7 acres behind his shed, and I farmed it. I got my equipment back there, and everything was fine. If you find anybody out there that has small parcels like that, you're going to find somebody that's land adjacent to them, or somebody is going to probably farm that, whether row crop or something. And I'm not trying to say that small farmers aren't important, the point I made before by saying I was a small farmer is I don't want to disparage that. But, John, how many RROs do we actually have out in the county right now? Just a guess.
6.
6. And they're, thank you. And they're not easy to get. I guess I just find it exasperating that we're separating agriculture. When it's as important to me to be able to get out there, and I've got a certain amount of time during the spring and the fall and the summer that I've got a window that I need to do things out in the field. Plant, fertilizer, harvest, and at times it can be difficult. Closer you get to any kind of municipality, any large village or city. I farm a piece next to the airport, and so I travel up Duncan Road, just north of the Monticello Road, and it's very difficult. There's times where I know I can't travel, and that's a township road. And there are just times I can't drive on it because the car and the traffic are such, and that's more than 14.5-foot pavement too. That's more like a 20, 22, 23-foot pavement. So, I mean, I can understand your idea of the small parcel concept where we want to protect these small parcels, but I don't think you're going to find in this county where there's going to be a lot of people anymore because of the price of commodities as they are, that you're going to have somebody trying to build something unless it's a family member, and that's what's been happening here for the most part lately. Unless it's a family, a grandchild, maybe a son or daughter, they want to put a house out in a rural area on grandpa's farm or, where great-grandma was, something like that, where it used to be in the past where you'd have small parcels like that, and they were usually what we considered mud holes. Places where you didn't have any drain tiles. Places that didn't drain. Those are the one areas that didn't produce, so you wanted to get rid of those. If they were on a road, then you sold them off for a house or something and let that poor individual suffer. But anymore, the commodities dictate that that's not done anymore. I used to farm a farm over Piatt County that had an acre cut out of it, right in the center of it. And it was half-mile rows, and that's, if you're not familiar, half-mile rows are very nice to farm because you can drive instead of a quarter mile, and you're turning all the time. So you cut your turn time down in half. But for some reason, they put this house out in the middle. It cut the value of the property, and I bet today that person who sold it probably 20 years probably didn't get half of what they would today if it was sold as farmland. So what used to be the price of a house or RRO for the land now is basically the price of farmland. We just yesterday had 173 acres out here east of town. It went for $15,300 an acre. And it's not going to be developed anytime soon. So that's the kind of prices you used to get when you'd sell it off for other than agricultural purposes. So there's a lot more working against that, the idea of the small farm operator than just housing, some type of development other than agriculture. Then what do we do? What do we look at? Well, we're not a home rule county. Our county is not run by one entity, thank goodness. So we have the Food Policy Council, and I'm curious if you're working with the cities of Champaign or Band of Savoy, because this is where our populace center is. If you're passing on, I think you should be passing on policies to the cities of Champaign, Urbana, Savoy, and saying, you know, you've got these small areas and stuff. What can you do to help us develop closer to the population? Because let's face it, when you get out a mile and a half out here, the cities dictate what goes on for development, period. I mean, we pass ordinances out here in a mile and a half, but to no avail. Urbana does still work with them, with the county when it comes to rezonings. But if it's out there, the rezonings are taken care of by the cities. Those developments are already cut and dried before the county even knows about them, for the most part. My maternal grandparents used to live, and they're deceased, but they used to live in Peoria Heights. You could overlook the brewery, Pabst Brewery in Peoria Heights where they lived. They had a nice sized lot, and they were individuals that grew up in the Depression. And my grandfather, every year he was alive, had a garden in the back. And this is a blue-collar area where houses were probably 1,000 square foot or less. They weren't big lots. He had some brothers and sisters who lived close to him, but every year he put up probably a 20 by 25 garden. He had enough there for himself, my grandmother, and my mother and her 2 sisters. And every year he put this garden in. And this is in the middle of Peoria Heights. It's very well developed. But he was undisturbed by anything, by having that garden in there. And some things he could produce year-round. My point of bringing that up is I think there needs to be more emphasis put here where there's areas we've got here in Learman. We've got a great idea growing out here for local food. I think things like that, and I know throughout the country there's things like that going on. There was a retired football player, and I saw him on the C-SPAN one time. But he's going around, and he's written books, a couple books, I think, about urban food production. I think it's great. We've got open lots out here, areas that need backfill. I don't think they need them. I stand corrected. They don't have any backfill. There's places where food can be produced. There's a lot of ideas that I think can get contagious here in the urban population. I'm going to quit now. I know I've gone on for a while, and I appreciate your me letting me bend your ear. But I just want to get back and say that I don't understand how we're trying to champion one part of agriculture and not the other. But when I look at things, and I know, I'm pretty sure everyone on this ELUC committee wants preservation of agriculture, wants to keep, at least amount of development out here in the Ag 1, Ag 2 areas. And that's what the ordinance, as long as I've been on here, has been trying to do, strive to make it more difficult to develop and to try and develop more contiguous and compact and do it thoughtfully and carefully, because we know we're going to need to go out with some sprawl sometimes, but there's areas that have backfill issues that are not being addressed as far as I'm concerned, but that's beside the point. I just have I get really exasperated, and that's probably why I'm not speaking is the way I am, that we're trying to separate two agricultures, when what I see is they're one and the same. That's my point. I think we need to protect it all, and I don't know if it's going to help by adding another line in on the ordinance when it comes to RRO. I just don't see it. So with that, I'll end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I, too, coming from a farm background. Now, farming is not my full-time profession, but I do help my dad farm row crops. A lot of what John says, I mean, basically what he says, yeah, I would agree with it. One specific thing that's mentioned in the support of this resolution is the smaller parcels. And John's kind of spoke to that, but part of my thinking as agriculture and trying to preserve farming and everything, which I agree we need to do, the smaller parcels, and I would agree with this, are more usable for local foods production. But if you already have a smaller parcel and somebody is wanting to develop that smaller parcel, it makes more sense to me, whether it be up against the cities or out in the county, to go ahead and, I mean, all the other criteria met. You have a small parcel here that would suit their needs, or you have a large parcel that they could take part of that for the development. You use the small parcel that's already subdivided out instead of subdividing out of a larger tract. That's maybe a little bit selfish as a farmer because, again, John mentioned larger fields. They're easier to farm. But we farm some small fields. It's doable. It's just not as efficient. And John spoke to, again, ag all being the same. Everybody out in the rural areas faces the issues with cars, with neighbors that, you know, maybe don't like you farming up against them. We've had a neighbor in the past who had a tar and chip driveway that we drove our pickup truck, not even heavily loaded, just a pickup truck down the driveway, because where we were farming in the field behind their house, that was the most efficient way to get back there to, it's probably like take lunch or something. Doesn't want us doing that. He had a fit because we drove our pickup truck on his gravel driveway, and why exactly he didn't want that, I don't know, but we all face issues with neighbors that don't necessarily like us, with cars from the urban areas that run us off the roads. It's amazing we don't have accidents out in the county a lot more than we do between agricultural equipment and vehicles. But a lot of, basically, John said it well, I would say, in that, to me, yeah, agriculture is agriculture. We face a lot of the same issues. You can't hardly divide them out. I mean, some of your local crops, yeah, you can make some distinctions, such as one that comes to mind. Yeah, a lot of your local foods are more susceptible to chemical drift, but that can be an issue for us with the row crop farming too. So that's just one minor thing. I mean, chemical drift is something that nobody wants in agriculture if you're doing it right. And yeah, adding another line in this, I guess I don't see necessarily how it benefits. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate what my colleagues have stated. I think there's a misimpression that it's putting two types of agriculture against each other. I don't think that is the issue or the focus. I think it's more that there is a need that's being expressed by the people who are in the commodity of local foods, that they feel that they need some additional means and ways to protect their smaller acreage, and that is not built into any of the zoning at all. And so this is a new thing to be considering, and I do encourage my fellow members here on ELOC to pass it forward to the ZBA so there can be a public hearing where there can be more opportunity for people to come and speak on both sides of the issue, so that the ZBA then can have this hearing and then bring forward back to us at ELOC and maybe to the county board their findings and their recommendation on this rather than just truncating it right here at ELOC.
As a former chair and vice chair of ELOC and now part of this committee, I have some concerns about this ordinance. One of my concerns is dependent upon the objectivity of the ZBA. And I noticed that 2 ZBA members came here to support this ordinance, and I'm wondering if there is maybe a conflict of interest possibly here. Maybe it's perceived, but it does bring to mind that problem. So I'm having a conundrum with this right now, and hopefully I'll make the right decision when the time comes.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify what Ms. Petrie brought up is, I hope I can clarify this. I didn't mean that we're pitting 2 different agricultures together. What I'm saying is we're separating them, not pitting them together. We're separating them when they have everything in common. And I was just mentioning to Mr. Kurtz a story that our farm experienced back in the early 70s when my brother had a 4-H sheep project, and he had 6 ewes that he had in his project, and we lived, 2 miles outside of Pasodum. That was the closest village that was next to us. And I remember one day there was a pack of 4 or 5 dogs that came, and they got half of the sheep, killed them. Where they came from, I don't know. But we had the sheep fenced off and everything else. And obviously they had to come from somewhere. But, he lost 3 sheep that couldn't be replaced because we were close enough to where he had to show them for his 4-H project. So he was out sheep. But, my experience of why I bring that up is because we all face hardships out there in rural areas like that. That was an experience I had as a kid, but it's not easy being out there. I like to think of it when I'm trying to move from field to field, and I'm not that far away, and I get cars just come from out of nowhere. I can look both ways, and I can see for a mile, 2 miles away, and then all of a sudden I pull out with my piece of equipment, and there's somebody on my tail. And I have to get off the road or something like that, or I'm stopped from pulling a truck with a wagon out of the field or something like that. And it would be a lot easier if I could just do that and not be hindered by anything. But even out in the far rural areas where I live, I still have traffic issues. And I like to make the point, too, that between my father and myself, which were 2 miles as a crow fly away from each other, there are, not including our homes, there are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses between the 2 of us. And they all used to be farmers in those homes. One of them is abandoned, probably soon to be burned down or bulldozed down. One individual out of those other remaining houses is an active farmer. The rest of them are all individuals that like living out in the country, and I'm not saying that's bad. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm just saying the population out in the rural areas have changed. And why I'm trying to make the comparison is I know that Eric and his family live close to, real type subdivisions up there in Muhammad. And it's probably not a lot of fun up there trying to farm around the residential areas because they don't really care what you're doing. Those people got their things they want to do in their backyards and everything else, and they don't want to hear sheep bawling because that can be really obnoxious. I know that sound. They don't want to hear chickens running around, or they don't want to hear any noise like that or anything. But I'm afraid that's just, some of the facts that we have to deal with when we're in agriculture. Some of the problems and hurdles we have out here in rural areas that, a lot of urban people don't know. A lot of times it's not easy out there trying to do stuff. It's hard. And I'm not trying to blame people that live out there or people who drive through the country. I'm just stating the fact that it's difficult. So I just wanted to clarify that and thank the chair for letting me indulge again.
Little bit more, maybe talking about rural residential overlays. Yeah, and kind of tying in with John again still. You've got two situations. You've got, say, 5 acres, a house, and you're growing local foods on it. Over here, you've got a commercial operation, the farmhouse, and 5 acres, or maybe not 5 acres, but a large grain setup, grain leg, bins, sheds, center of operation for a large row crop commercial farm. Setting an RRO up against either one of those, it's not going to impact both of them, how they do business, no matter what kind of development. I mean, a rural residential overlay, you're going to increase the traffic for both. It is. It's just a fact of life that if you're living out in the country, you're going to face hurdles that living in the middle of town or in a subdivision you don't face because you aren't involved in agriculture.
Ask if the committee would entertain an additional comment. I'm directing my comments to the chair.
Order, sir. Please sit down.
Harper?
No.
Kurtz?
No.
Petrie? Yes. Schrader?
No.
Esri?
No.
Langenheim?
I'd like to leave the room, but yes. Okay. The motion failed. Okay. Now we move to item 7A. And I'd like to call on Moore for comment. Carl Moore.
So, good evening. I'm Cameron Moore. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. With me tonight is Kathy Larson, who is an Economic Development Specialist. We're here specifically to talk about the CDAP loan request from LA Gourmet. But before I do that, if I could, I'd just like to take a couple minutes. I know we've got some new county board members, and we haven't been before this committee for a few years with one of these loan requests. So what I'd like to do, if I could, is just give a little bit of background on the CDAP program. CDAP is one of 4 loan programs that are operated by the Regional Planning Commission. CDAP stands for Community Development Assistance Program. These dollars were originally federal dollars. They came to Champaign County back in the 80s. And they actually, not that these are all that important, but they came through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant Program. And this is sort of your classic revolving loan fund. Those funds were provided here originally for business loans. We were able to then recapture those funds when the businesses repaid the loans and loan them out again. And so I mentioned the first CDAP loan we got was 1983. Ultimately, there were some other loans in the 80s. We received a total of about $2.6 million in CDAP funds back in the 80s. Since then, we've actually made about 75 loans. Again, loans, we loan the money out, gets paid back, we loan it out again. So we've made about 75 loans, a total of about $12 million. So we've had some pretty good success with this program. The CDAP loan amounts range from large to small. The smallest CDAP loan we've made has been $10,000. The largest one has been $950,000. So there's quite a range of loans that we've made out of this program. Our current CDAP loan portfolio, active loans, we have 11 loans out that total $2.6 million. And again, I think this is one of the things that tells you the value of these programs. Over the years, I mentioned that we've loaned out $12 million. That $12 million that has been loaned through Champaign County's program has actually leveraged $47 million in private investment. So these are participation loans. There's always bank financing involved, and that's part of the intent behind these. So we have about a 4-to-1 leverage ratio on these loans overall. The 11 existing CDAP loans that we currently have out, we do have one that we're in a legal issue in a process of collection. I mentioned 75 loans that we've made, and about 7 of those loans have not been paid in full. I think all of them we've got some partial payment. And I would just add to that that most of that's been the last 3 or 4 years. Much like you've heard with banks, the economy's been tough. Our loan portfolio has taken some pretty good hits the last 3 or 4 years, although we see lots of signs that things start to get better. So we currently have about $1.4 million in the CDAP loan program that is available to be loaned, and that would potentially be a source of funds for the loan that will be presented tonight. I did also want to mention we have 3 other loan programs. Our total loan portfolio right now, currently outstanding, we have 52 loans out. That's a total of about $5.5 million that we have invested in area businesses here in Champaign County. And I do want to mention, most importantly, the last few years, as I said, haven't been great for the loan business. We haven't seen a lot of demand, and between all 4 of our programs, we currently have about $3.1 million that we can loan. So we hope that you'll take a good look at this loan presented to you tonight, but we also have some other money we'd like to loan out if you know someone that might be interested. I'm going to introduce or ask Kathy to introduce this particular loan and do an overview of this loan, and then we'd be happy to answer questions. I also understand that the loan applicants and the participating bank are also here tonight. So, Kathy.
So out of our 4 loan programs, I do want to mention that the CDAP program encompasses rural areas in Champaign County, and so that's why it comes through the ELEC committee. And each of our loan programs has its own loan approval committee. And the other 3 loan programs have location-based needs as well, and so their committees come from different backgrounds. So LA Gourmet Catering is the consideration for tonight. The request is for up to $600,950, and they've been in business since 2006, and they do full-service catering for a variety of events in the community in the region and for companies as well, events and companies. They have many clients in the region and many large clients in there. So this project is to take a site in rural Champaign and renovate it and construct a facility that can house events, that they could cater and host events at this site. The total project cost is $1.7 million, and they will be getting a majority of their financing from Fisher National Bank in Mahomet. And so this CDAP loan would help fill in the gap for the financing for this project. I do want to mention that we also took this loan request to our IRP loan committee this week so that we could maybe take out $150,000 of the $600,000 request here tonight and take $150,000 and put it through another program that we have, the IRP loan program. And there was a consensus to move ahead with that and approve it, but it's contingent upon the CDAP loan request that's here tonight. So between Fisher National Bank and RPC, we've done extensive analysis over the company and the financials and the guarantors that will be on the loan, and the debt service would cover the loans that are involved in this project. The collateral is also there. We would take a subordinate position behind the bank, and that's our normal procedure with our loan programs. And there will also be job creation and job retention with this project. And we feel like it's a very positive project for our program and for the community. So I can also take any questions as well.
I move we approve the CDAP loan request for $600,950.
You said you've already guaranteed a loan 150 from a different program. We're talking 450 right now?
We are, and you could do it one of two ways. If you wanted to approve a loan for 450 or up to 600 was the way we presented it, because we didn't know the outcome of the previous loan committee that just met yesterday or the day before. So,
All right, so
we're
still
looking at 450 at this point.
For 450, okay. So, well, we've discussed this project at length and have overwhelmingly approved this project at the county board level. Since the bank, and I've looked at these loans going back to 1986 with Cameron. We looked very carefully over the reinvestment and the success of these loans, and these loans have been very, very helpful in business development here in Champaign County, and I feel that this loan is certainly well qualified for us to pass through, since it's not going to cost us or at the county out of funds a penny. This is going to be guaranteed through the RPC and through this bank, and I feel comfortable that we can pass this on to the county board for approval.
Okay, I have a number of questions. I'm on the RPC page right now looking at the loan criteria, and I heard you say you have one of these loans for $900,000.
In the CDAP portfolio?
Okay, well then I'm assuming that the information needs to be corrected on the website because it says the maximum is $750,000. Okay. Was that a special case?
No, that, actually, that was a limit that we established some years ago, but, and that was initially with the program, and it does need to be updated.
Okay.
Once we loan the money out and we get it back, we can sort of establish our own criteria. So we have made a few loans higher than that. We do need to update that on our webpage.
All right. And then another criteria I'm reading here is that one full-time equivalent job for every 15,000 the CDAP funds invested. And then I'm reading here that the business plan is to retain 7 full-time and create 5 full-time. That doesn't meet this criteria for the amount of money that's being asked.
Yeah, and again, that criteria was one that was established really back in the 80s when we originally got the money. We have deviated somewhat from that criteria over the years. These are really our decisions to make now with how we want to spend this money, and so that is another piece of this we should update for the website.
Okay, and so whatever the criteria, you end up deciding upon a number of jobs generated. What mechanism do you use to check if indeed those jobs are generated and are kept over time?
So we do send out quarterly to semi-annual reports to the clients, and we ask them to submit the information about their jobs retained and created. So we track that for the first 2 years of the loan. Usually after that time, we don't track it further, but that's what our past practice has been, is for 2 years.
Yeah, that shows up actually in the loan documents for all of our loan funds, that the recipient of the loan has to provide us with that information, and we collect it quarterly.
Okay. And is there, I don't feel I have a sense of the rationale why you shifted potentially $150,000 in for this from this other program. Is it payback, interest rate? What is the strategy behind that?
Well, the terms would be the same for both loans. So each loan would have the same interest rate, the same amortization, and the same terms. We wanted a couple of things. We wanted to make sure the risk was a little balanced so that we could still leave funds in the CDAP program available for future projects. And also with our IRP program, it's a new program that we need to lend funds out of from that program and have some clients in there. So
Yeah, let me be a little more direct on that last point. The other program that we did approve the $150,000 out, as opposed to grant money, in that particular program, what we did is we borrowed from the United States Department of Agriculture $750,000, 1%, 30 years. And so we have not made a loan out of that program since all that was approved now, probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. So it's important for our ability to repay that loan that we start to make loans out of that program.
I got it. Okay, and I think my last question is, it's not clear to me, I understand this is a revolving loan fund, but there is long payback periods. So when you loan out, say, $600,000, what does that do to the piggy bank full of monies for the next person who might come forward and ask for some monies?
Well, we still have over $1 million available, so this would just take a small chunk out of it. We would still have plenty. And we get repayments every month that fill back in that gap, so.
Okay.
Keeps it rolling.
Yeah, with the total loans here of $600,000, we still have $2.5 million available to loan. And as Kathy said, these loan funds are recharging every month as people repay us.
Okay, thank you very much.
I just want to say, I hope this passes this committee, and I hope it passes the full county board. I don't see any problem with this. I think it's a great investment. This is the kind of investment that we need in this kind of county, And when I look at, see who the guarantors are beside the banks, I see Lauren and Annie and Jack Murray's name on there, and I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. So. We can have it read back, but I believe my motion was that we approve the $600,950 loan, CDAP loan. I think it was my.
I think it doesn't say that. I think it says up to that amount.
Well, okay. That's a friendly amendment, or I'll just go ahead and change it if that's all right. Up to $600,950.
Who had the second? Okay, Aaron.
The motion is to approve the CDAP loan up to $600,950,000. $600,950. Period.
Thank you.
NPDES Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, M54 Stormwater Discharge Permit with Illinois Environment Protection Agency. Notice of intent, NOI 3109-2-29/14. 2, annual update of activities 4/11 3-3112. Okay. Can I have a motion on this? I would, if there are no objections, I would like a motion covering both items, omnibus motion. So moved. Okay, is there a second? Second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Whoops. Jesus. I didn't hear any. It wanted to try for Christ's sake.
Well, the way we do county business. Yeah, I have quite a few questions and issues. I sent them to John this afternoon, and in my reply back to John, besides thanking him for responding, is that maybe he could take some time and give us some background as to why this hasn't been done in such a long period of time, where the responsibility, I'll go through them. Why hasn't this been done in such a long period of time? Where does the responsibility for doing it fall? In other words, is it so many people being responsible that it fell through the cracks over time? Are there any fines that might come to us because there's been this lag? Are there any projects that have been done that are going to come back and bite us when the Illinois EPA comes around and checks our papers? And hoping that there's then mechanisms being put in place, which I'm gathering that is going to be the case, that we won't fall behind again. And then the last has to do with the matrix that is here with a long, long list of incompletes. And that I find a little discouraging, and I did ask in my message to John, how do things stand in bringing in some urban planning or civil engineering interns who are trained to do this kind of work, and this is a very dedicated, well-defined project where it might take some of the time pressure off of John in keeping up with these things. So in fairness to John, let him respond to all of you and not just be me who heard the information from him.
Okay, well, that's a lot of information. This program became a county program in 2003. The director of the Planning and Zoning Department was made the contact person for Champaign County, primarily because at that time it was thought that some new ordinances were needed, and they were so basic to running of our department that it was felt that's where it should be based. 2003, only 10 years ago, but a different time and place. 2003 was when we were beginning a changeover of zoning administrators. We had 4 different zoning administrators in 5 years. This thing, when it was put in our department, we gained no new employees. It was pretty much going to be done by the zoning administrator when he had time. 4 zoning administrators in 5 years. There was no time for at least 5 years. And after that 5 years, there was a little project called Comprehensive Zoning Review, so on and so forth. Be that as it may, it was centered in our department and we let it slide. Until 2010, when the LRMP was adopted, and beginning in 2009, I've piped up every chance I've had to make folks aware of our outstanding MS4 obligations. That's why it's in the LRMP. That's why Andrew Levy has been working so hard in fiscal 12, and he's working even harder in fiscal 13. And someone of his caliber is going to have to be working hard every year for this matrix to have completes. However, a lot of the things in that matrix are based upon us having an ordinance. Our state's attorney has worked for the past 3 months trying to figure out how the heck we can have an ordinance like we're supposed to when we don't really have statutory authority to have the ordinance. There's a lot of problems with this program, the way it's structured, what it tries to push off on the county without giving the county authority. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other counties in the state. Andrew and I have read every one of their ordinances. You'll see citations to statutory jurisdiction. It doesn't exist. Our state's attorney is trying to do it the right way, and so far that hasn't been identified, but he's still working on it. We hope to have that to this committee next month or the month thereafter. By the way, there's basically 1,000 square miles in Champaign County. This program relates to about 1%. Now, at one time, I thought the county board might have discretion to take it across the whole 1,000 square miles. I would not recommend that with the way it's currently staffed. But in fact, it's not clear we have that discretion. It's clear we have a responsibility, but we have very little jurisdiction, and that's a real challenge. But it's been like that since 2003, and let's see, what were some of the other questions here? We did receive a notice of violation. That's discussed in the memo. There are no fines. I've talked to the EPA folks. All we have to have to them is the items that we were supposed to already have to them, and we have to have those by March 22nd, the day after the county board meeting, and that is imminently doable. We're not proposing to change a lot. We'll have time to do that before September, when the next NOI is due for the next 5-year period. So this program is going to be getting a lot of your time this year. I doubt that any of you will ever forget about this program after this year. That being said, if you read through all the attachments, there was at least one large construction project here on our campus in the past few years that did not have a notice of intent. Now, since then, they all have. I don't know what that means. It's done. That project is completed. If you went by there today, it looks very good. And I hope that that's the way it stays, but we'll find out. We're going to get audited by the EPA this year.
The usual way to handle such violations is to tear the thing down.
Oh, I don't think so. They can talk to you about that, though. So I think that's most of the questions. As I've tried to make clear, Andrew Levy has worked very hard on this. I think he's done excellent work. He's made a huge difference in the program. If I had my druthers, we would just continue to have this under the RPC work contract, because Andrew has been very diligent working on this program, and he is an expert right now as far as I'm concerned. I'd hate to have to find another one, but that's not my call. And I just want to make sure we have adequate staffing. And I'm open to suggestions on if folks have ideas on how that staffing should be done. Interns are helpful, and very highly skilled interns might be able to take over from Andrew, but it would make a difficult time for me until I knew that they were fully competent in the program, and we've already passed that hurdle once. I hope we don't have to recreate that, but again, I'm willing to do whatever the county board wants in regards to that.
Any further comments?
I want to thank you, Patsy, for raising some good questions. I appreciate it. But don't laugh. I'm being sincere, being facetious. But they spawn a couple questions for me, and that is something about staffing. I know we've talked about staffing before in other projects, John, and I mean, it's always come down to make more sense if we can get RPC staff. That's probably our best route if we need it. So since you mentioned that, and Andrew is, here's a guy that's trying to do a redistricting map over here, and then here's a guy, Andrew, wearing another hat, trying to do an EPA permit processing discharge issue. And I'm just amazed, absolutely amazed, sir. You amaze me.
What's that?
Oh, Professor Petrie has made a point. Thank you. So anyway, that and trying to get into from a budgetary line item, and Ms. Busey if I get deep enough, may want to save me on this and rescue me. But from a budgetary standpoint, John, what do you think about, I mean, obviously, we're going to have to deal with this, like you said, every year. I mean, are we going to have to employ somebody from RPC, another individual to help Andrew, or Andrew's probably working on something else other than what he's currently doing with this permitting process? So I'll let you answer that, and I've got a follow-up, so.
Well, a couple of things, John. One thing this has caused me to wonder is if the county actually should have a staff person formally assigned as an environmental compliance officer. Susan Monty does some of that in her work with the waste management. It could also at least oversight to make sure we always get all the permits we need. That would be another part of that. I know some local governments are wrestling with RECRA requirements that they've gotten behind on. I wonder the same thing about the county. Or I don't know. Are we meeting all of those obligations? So that's just a question I had. Now, as relates to our department, this program does add unique requirements that we're going to always have to deal with. We're already dealing with them in a general way because of the construction permits that are required. And one of the long-term needs in our department is to maintain a staff position with some level of stormwater competency. We rely on outside engineers to review projects, and we need outside engineering, but we also need in-house capability to coordinate with the engineer. Maybe Andrew Cass will grow into that role. He's learned a lot so far. He certainly seems to be capable. I don't know that he's interested in stormwater, but to a certain extent, you know, it's what you have to deal with. But, so it's not just this program, it's also our own stormwater management policy, which we've had since 1990. And I've been always the primary staff person coordinating stormwater reviews. I love it. I don't want to do it forever. And we always need to be looking ahead to developing new, staffing. And that's one thing I wonder about a lot is how are we going to always have someone in that position? But again, that's in our department. I think the bigger issue here is environmental compliance for the county. I hope I answered or gave you some answers.
Yes, you did, and I'm glad you expounded on that too. Thank you. And I guess one more question I have, Mr. Chair, and that is from the standpoint of statutory jurisdiction. Like I said, I'm repeating myself, we're not a home rule county. So I'm wondering if, and maybe this is floated, if we're going to have to let the court figure this out, or if we're going to need to take this somewhere and just make a decision on what we're going to do, and then if there's any kind of objection to it, if we're just going to have to let the courts figure it out.
Your second alternative is the one that we face, I think.
Well,
just throwing that out.
Yeah.
It's going to cost money.
Because the state legislature's a joke. There's no priority. It's absolute. So trying to get something to help our situation out, I think we used to try and do things from the standpoint of county trying to get some help. Or I think it's just an absolute joke. There's no way we're going to get anything the way things are running. Any kind of help or relief or any kind of state legislative decision on this. I'm just befuddled how this state government runs.
My latest.
So I think we're probably going to have the courts figure this out. From a jurisdiction standpoint.
If you look at the map, John, of the MS4 jurisdiction, there's the area inside the cities. That's on page 69 of 107. Outside the cities, this program involves the county. It involves any drainage district with facilities within that yellow boundary. It involves the townships that have roads. It involves the University of Illinois. And I'm now of the opinion that they're really wanting us to work with all of these other jurisdictions and have agreements because we're the zoning authority. We have a much broader authority than any drainage district or any township. I think they want us to have agreements with those. And if that's what's really required, does anyone want to try to guess how long that might take? But I think that's the long-term solution, and, you know, EPA folks are intelligent. They know that. They know that's going to take some time. I think our state's attorney can be pretty clear with the facts. So we'll see what happens over the coming year. They're going to reach out to us. Yeah. We'll be having an audit sometime this year, and we'll get more information at that time.
Okay, any further comments? Do we have a motion?
Yes.
John?
And it was seconded. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Agricultural drainage contractor facility. But that's to add agricultural drainage contractor facilities to the ordinance, right?
Make a motion to receive and place on file.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
Okay, page 72. Second bullet. Under policy 4.3.5. Is there any? I'm sorry, what? 4.3. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. 4.3.5. I want to know, is there any definition of approximate? It says, on best farmland to be approximate, appropriate in rural area. Sorry, appropriate.
No, we haven't defined appropriate. In this instance, I believe that's self-evident.
You do?
But I know that in some cases it isn't.
Okay, and then continuing on the definitional question down to the last large bullet, but then indented to the smaller bullet that refers to policy 8.6.2. And there it says development to minimize. Is minimize being defined? I could take 1 inch off, I've minimized it.
Precisely so, and you're a county board member, and that's the judgment of the county board.
Oh, great, Scott. Well, I think both appropriate and minimize might be put under consideration for some definition. Okay, and then on page 74, number 20, this is an English issue for me. The way it reads, the on average is in the middle of the sentence. I know it was added. I'm not questioning it being added, but on average should be at the beginning of the sentence. It should read, on average as much as 50% of dollar volume. Okay,
We can make that change.
great. Did you see where I was reading, John?
Yes.
Yes, it looks like there's a underline or an average.
Right, and it says in the memo that came out of the ZBA suggestion. I'm just, because of where it's in, it could mess up as to how it's interpreted. That's all.
We can always use a lot of those. We hardly ever get enough, so.
Take a look at our archives.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
I'm just showing I read the material this evening, that's all, guys.
We know that you've read the materials. We had ample demonstration of that. Now, are there any further comments? All right, all in favor of the item as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now, the next one is 8B. Minor amendment to the LRMP, which, most of which were reviewed during our February meeting. The fourth, which is added, is an update to the Village of Mahomet contiguous urban growth area, which I believe is designated by the Census Bureau anyway, isn't it?
What?
No, that's actually our LRMP.
Is that,
No.
okay. All right. Any discussion of that? Who?
Susan's there.
Oh,
Hi, I'd just like to indicate the status here of that fourth item was added for your reference, and then if there were any questions about the added fifth minor amendment, which is being introduced at this, with this agenda item. So essentially, the Village of Mahomet would like to reduce the area of its contiguous urban growth area, as is indicated on this map, to eliminate some areas not served by their public sewer system and not anticipated to be served in the near term. So there are three distinct areas highlighted on this map provided to you. All right. It is pretty straightforward. Yes.
I've said this before, and I said it to John before the meeting started. I have no problems with the amendments. My concern is as we go in and make these, do these amendments, we come to a tipping point where we think we've thought through all ramifications throughout the zoning ordinance, and then we get ourselves in a sticky wicket. And I encourage that you and John come to the county board when you think we've met sticky wicket, where we really have to look at the whole zoning ordinance document again, because slicing and dicing, and I was telling John, I was just reading a case, nothing to do with here, but the issue of amendments, and then they hadn't checked on something down the line and they were in deep trouble. So that's all.
Thank you.
any further comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. What? There's no motion? Oh, excuse me. We need a motion. So moved. Second. All right, now, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Well, it looks like we're in the home stretch. Item 9A. A motion to allow variances, or to refer to the ZBA, allow variances for municipal subdivision regulations for a rural water district water treatment plant and related facilities. We got a motion to approve and a second. Is there a discussion? Are there any questions about it? Okay.
Yeah, me. Well, I'm having trouble with it. I voted for it previously when I was assured that the two entities could get together. I'm being told this evening that that just probably will never happen. My second issue is, John's terminology was the camel's nose under the tent. And this is individualized variance, which, let me tell you, in planning law class, you just don't do this kind of stuff. So I'm very troubled about this approach to get this done. And I'm sorry this seems to be the way, the mechanism, but I have trouble supporting it because of the mechanism.
Okay. Any further? Yes, sir.
I have discussions with the administrator, Adam Muhammad, asked very simply if their board would convene any future discussions with the water company, and wanted to give them a heads up as to what we were doing here. I felt it was important that they at least knew the situation as it stood and didn't want to backdoor anything. I feel it's important that we keep open lines of communication between all government entities. And I haven't had actually an answer back, but at the last vote it was 5-2 against, I was told. So this is an essential service. This has to take place. It's rare that you get 27 votes to override a protest on any protest. The majority of our county board sees this as an essential service, a very important service that needs to be expanded. And the intractability of either one or both sides of this sort of confounds me, because this issue should be a positive for both. This is an expansion of a very important service that needs to take place. And I felt that though Patsy may have a point, honestly, this variance is a unique one to a specific issue, to a specific problem that I think needs to be passed because of the situation. So I will vote for this. Patsy. No, John's next. Okay, John, go.
I'm sorry. I was smiling. I wasn't making faces. I'm sorry. Are you done?
I'm done. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. She wasn't laughing at you. She was laughing at me. I'm sorry. Mr. Chair. Although, Patsy, you bring up a good point. I would say that because this is a utility, and it is a public utility, I think, and we've done changes in the ordinance a few times that probably were not up to what you would consider you'd want to teach in any courses that you used to teach at the university planning department. But with that, I remember back in the day on ELOC, or ZBA, I should say, where we were citing, because they were getting real popular, cell phone towers in the county. And then Attorney General Roland Burse wrote a decision that said, you know, they shouldn't have to mess with you municipalities. I'm going to write this and say you're a utility. You're like the electric company with a light line in front of your house or anything. No more of this meddling with these small communities. So with a stroke of a pen, Roland Burse didn't allow us to do anything with cell phone towers anymore. So I think there are things that we can do that help the public good. I'm sure that's what Mr. Burse had in mind. Maybe not a job after he was done working public. I didn't say that. I'm just throwing that out there because I don't know, but crazier things have happened. But anyway, that's how it's decided. And this is a public utility. It really is. So I think this is something that needs special attention, and I think it's for the public good. And I think from that standpoint, I'm all for a change.
Comments? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. The ayes have it. Okay. Monthly reports. What?
I move that we put them on file.
Okay. Any comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Is there any other business? The chair's report is he apologizes for being below par this evening. 13th, semi-annual review of closed session minutes. Where? I have it. You have it.
Yes. I'll be glad to read it. Pursuant to the statutory requirement to conduct a semi-annual review of all closed meeting minutes, I move that the closed meeting minutes of the Environment and Land Use Committee be maintained as closed to protect the public interest or the privacy of individuals, with the exception of the minutes from 20 September 2007, which may now be determined as open session minutes.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Okay. 7A and 7B go on the consent agenda. 7A, 7B. That's it. Yeah. Any Well, I think you're free to go. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
John, is it possible in your report